Welcome to Thez Nutz Garage, and today we're going to reveal how much we made in our first 35 days on YouTube. And what could we have bought with that money? It's shocking, so stay tuned to Thez Nutz Garage. Alright, so today I have two helpers. These are my grandchildren. I won't give you their names because they're on YouTube, but y'all can wave at everybody. Wave at YouTube land, kids. Alright, so like I did in the intro, what I'm going to tell you now is how much I made in my first 35 days being monetized on YouTube. Now, I have been on YouTube for over 2 years, but YouTube has certain thresholds you have to get to get monetized, and that means you're getting paid. Now, January of this year, towards the end of the month, we reached 1,000 subscribers. So I'd like to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel and liked the videos, commented, and shared these videos, because you're helping our channel grow, and the more we grow, the more cool and awesome builds we can do. You know, kind of like some of those big, huge channels that you see on YouTube. It'd be nice just to get to a fraction of their subscriber base. So in the first 35 days, I made a whopping $127. I'll put that up there again. $127 for 1,000 subscribers. So the way I kind of did the math is for every 1,000 subscribers that I have is about $100 a month. Just doing some quick math in my head. So I'm hoping that as of today, it is April 2nd, and I think since January 25th, we've grown almost 200 more subscribers. So we're almost at 1,200 subscribers, and so thank those new 200 subscribers. So thank y'all very much. So what in the world could I have bought with $127? Well, it's going to be shocking. So brace yourself, because she's trying to give it away back here, and it's not a little red whatever accordion. It's not that. What it is some Rancho Shocks. These are Rancho 5000 shocks, and what we're going to be doing later in this video is we're going to be installing these shocks on the truck. Now, these shocks are for the back of the truck, and this is basically the shock right here. This is a rear shock for this 98 Ford Expedition. This string that you see here is basically a retaining wire to keep the shock compressed. Now, we will be, like I said, installing these, and then what this one has back here is basically the boot. A lot of shocks, and I'll show you the difference here in a little bit of this shock compared to the factory shock. And well, she keeps stealing it. Basically, a factory shock doesn't have this little rubber boot. It basically has another steel cover that comes down over part of the shock, so no dirt and debris gets on this. I'll call it the shaft of the shock. So let's get out here and let's install this shock, or the pair of shocks, on this truck. Alright, so let's go over the stuff in the box here. Sorry for the lighting if it's really bright. Basically, you have your shock. Like I said, this is a retaining wire, keeps it closed together. This is a boot that goes on there once we... you have to put this on the shock before you install the shock, because if you don't, well, you just didn't install it properly. You get a nice little wire tie, zip strap, whatever you want to call it. Wonderful. We also got a bag of hardware. It's got this little bolt. I don't know what it goes to. We'll find out if we even need it at all. This is kind of probably a universal set of hardware. So it looks like then we got 4 washers, big bolt, and another bolt, or not bolt, but a nut. These nuts. So I'm assuming it goes like this. This looks like it's more like an extension, maybe where it screws into a place of a shock, and then the shock goes out here. That's probably like an extension of some sort. But we're just going to keep it together. We may need it, we may not. Won't know till I get down there. It's the first time I've ever replaced shocks on an Expedition. Looks like we got another bag of hardware. Got some sleeves. Have a third sleeve of some sort. Looks like 2 of them are the same. We have another set of 4 washers. 2 of them are the same diameter on the inside, and these are a little bit smaller. So we're gonna set all this stuff to the side, and we'll get underneath the truck and we'll remove 1 shock on the truck and go from there, and then I'll compare the 2 shocks. All right, so I'm underneath the truck. Here's 1 nut and bolt for a shock. And if you look up, way up in here, it's gonna be another, probably, maybe right. It's kind of hard to see with the camera, but you basically have another nut in the bolt up here at the top. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be using some of this Amsoil metal protector. What I'm gonna do is spray all my nuts and bolts, let them sit for a minute, and then I will remove this shock. Now it looks like the one on the driver's side is gonna be a little bit more detailed to get out of, because of this fuel tank. And you can see the fuel tank is a 4x4, so that fuel tank can go anywhere. So that fuel tank's gonna make it a little bit more difficult, but not too bad. So let's get these nuts and bolts sprayed and I'll be back. Alrighty, so we have an 18mm nut and bolt. I basically have a little impact wrench or gun, whatever you want to call it, battery up powered. Just gonna put it on there. And there our nut comes off. Alright, so something else is usually these shocks may have a little pressure on them, so it's pushing down on this bolt and kind of keeping it stuck in there. So you can put your bolt back on there a little bit, kind of tap it, get it started, remove your nut, and now you can just don't want to go hog wild and be beating on that, because then you'll mess up your bolt. So now the bolt still won't come out. So what I'm going to do is take a punch, just kind of drive it on through. Now you see how that shock pushed down, and it's continuing to extend out. That's because it still has a little pressure in it. So what we're going to do is to remove the top bolt the same way. And when I get the top bolt removed, we'll come back and show you the difference in these 2 shocks. All right, so I just removed that rear shock, some of the hardware, the bolts. This is the bottom bolt. These are 18mm nuts and bolts, and this is the bottom one. It's easy to tell because the nut is like this, the bolt is like this, and the top, the upper and lower are different. So this is the lower, and this is the upper. You can see it has the nut and a retaining clip are made together. See it like that? And basically what that's going to do is when we get ready to install the shock, we can lock this nut into where it goes, grab the shock in one hand, put it up there, run the bolt through it, and we got it where it needs to go. Now, this is the factory shock. I do believe this is a factory Ford shock. I don't see any stampings on it that say Ford. Well, actually I do, right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it does say Motorcraft. So this is going to be the original shock from 20-something years old, 23 years old at this point. And it's fairly okay, but going down the road, I can feel my truck bouncing and rolling, going around curves and stuff like that. So they do need to be replaced. And it is pretty easy to push the shock down. It may not look like it because, you know, whatever. But it's coming back out on its own. You can hear it kind of making noises inside. Now, looking at this shock, once it gets fully extended, this is the upper part of the shock, and this is the lower part of the shock. This upper piece is just a dust boot, or this one's made of steel, so it's just a dust cover. And there's a steel rod that comes up and connects to this. So I'm going to compare this part of the shock, the lower part, which is the actual shock part, to the Rancho shock. And you can see that the Rancho shock comes up about a couple of more inches than the factory Ford shock. Now, we're going to be putting this boot up here on this part of the shock, if you can see, and this is just a dust cover that covers this shaft right here. Now, This wire, like I said before, is a retaining wire that keeps this shock squeezed together. So when we get ready to install this, what we're gonna do is get our lower part of our boot on the shock. So when we put it on the vehicle, it's ready to install, so that way we don't have to try to fight with it. It's just easier to put it around the shock before we install the shock. Now once we start installing the shock, we'll take our upper bolt and it'll run through here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray a little bit of that metal protector in there, give it a little lube, so that way when we push the bolt through it, it'll slide right through. Once we get the upper part done, we'll cut this piece, the shock will extend, and we'll be ready with our lower bolt to stick in through the mounting, I'll call it the bracket on the axle. And you kind of got to be ready to line it up and shove that bolt through there in the right time. Or what you're going to have to do is, once your shock extends all the way out, you're going to have to push that back up. And if it's a really strong shock, it's going to be kind of difficult. Or you're going to have to use a jack to put up underneath it to get it to where it goes. That's the plan. We'll see how it works. So let's get over there and I'll install this shock. And, all right, so I did put my nut and my retainer bolt at the top. Also, real quick, went ahead and installed this bushing. I will show you how I installed this bushing on this shock. After I installed this, I had to release that because this bushing, or not bushing, but boot wouldn't slide far enough down on the shock to make it stay. So, just stick this in up here. That will stay. Looks like we have contact. Well, there's the upper part of the shock. What we got to do now is twist the lower shock to line up to where it needs to go. I want to just push the bottom of the shock up. All right, so here, looks like we have a little play in this hole with our bolt. So what I'm going to do is see if one of these sleeves will fit in there. Now in this kit, you remember those 3 sleeves. I'm going to find which one that fits the best. Like that. We're just going to insert that sleeve into the shock here. Alright, put our nut on the back, tighten it up. And the next thing we're going to do is just wipe this shock down, make sure our boot's lining up. I guess we could put our decal on here. If you want to. If you don't, don't. Alrighty, so let's jump out here and I'll show you how to put this boot on this shock real quick. Alrighty, so I've done the passenger side of the truck, and you've seen where I had to install that red boot on the shock before I installed it. It's not that difficult to do, pushing the shock back up in there. But now I'm gonna show you this shock. Now, I'm gonna turn this camera down just a little bit. Now this shock right here has fully extended out. Maybe you can see a little bit better like this. And this is a bad shock. And this light, I am very sorry. It basically, once you push it down, hardly has any recoil. It's coming out, but I can hold it with my hand. This shock is bad, and this is why the truck's riding so bad. 140,000 miles, probably should have been replaced 70,000 miles ago. So, still, hasn't come out. And this right here, all thing that's happened is the truck now is riding on the coil springs, and you're just gonna get that bouncy ride. Now, let's move over here to our other shock. And I'm gonna show you how to install this. I can get all this stuff out of the way. This boot, it's not hard. One thing you do wanna make sure before we go back to install this other side of the shock is to get in the right sleeve with these bolts. This is the upper sleeve. Probably use these two here just to make the fitment better. The two smaller, if you're doing an expedition, the two smaller sleeves. One in the upper part of the bushing here. Let's spray some stuff in it. It's not make it slippery. You're just gonna press these little sleeves in with your hand. It's not hard. You can take a little hammer and tap on it. Alrighty. So there's that. Now once we have the shock in our hand, we're just going to cut this wire with a pair of wire cutters. You're going to see this come up maybe sometime today. There she goes. She's extending out. Alright, so what we're going to do is cut the rest of these wires off. Get them off of there. Get this one off of here. Cut them off. Alright, the way this boot works, so you're going to take the big end, and it's going to go like that. The smaller end, you're just going to slowly just kind of work it around the upper part of the shock. Like that. I went a little too far, but you can just push it back around. Like that right there. And that's basically what you're wanting. And when it comes to the bottom, what we're going to do is pull it down. If you can see this part of the shock is kind of goes in, we're going to take this lower part of the boot and put it right here, just like that. We're going to hold it there, and then what I'm going to do is put a zip strap around it, which they did supply in the kit. I would think this would have a little bit better, maybe like a metal clip or something to hold this part of the boot in, but then again, it's not going to take much. It's just over time, I do know that these plastic wire zip ties, wire ties or whatever, underneath the vehicle, they're going to get, you know, hard or crack or break or something like that. So then you got this boot flopping around. So I guess what I'll have to do is just keep an eye on these, make sure they're not have come unloose. So now what I'm going to do is just jump back up underneath the truck. I'm going to install this real quick. I'm going to do that off camera because it's not that difficult. So I showed you once, I'm not going to show you twice. So I'm going to get to doing this. Be back. All right, so that's going to be the end of this video. And something that I can notice right away is that the back end of the truck is up higher. It was kind of starting to get that silly looking squat action going on. So these don't like that. But these shocks have raised the back end up. Now when it goes talking about the front shocks up here, that's going to be in a later video, because what I'm going to be doing up front is replacing the shocks, suspension components, and the CV shafts. And that's going to be kind of all in one big video. So if you're waiting to see that, stay tuned. Probably in the next month or so, I'll get that done. Now, it's 30 minutes later, and this shock still hasn't expanded on its own. That's because it's junk. So enough of that. So if you like the video, give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, because the more subscribers we have, the more YouTube money we can get. And I will post all my YouTube payouts on my channel. I'm not going to keep all that secret, because I don't have enough subscribers yet to have a big ton of money like some of these big channels do. But even if I got big, I have no problem sharing with what I'm making on YouTube to you, because you are part of the Thez Nutz Garage family. So if you haven't commented, comment down below. Thank you so much for all your support of Thez Nutz Garage, and I'm gonna get out of here, take this thing for a test drive, and y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next video.